first guest out here today really needs no introduction to this group, but he surely understands what you do. Brian Kemp, 35 years ago, started a small business with a shovel and a pickup truck and grew it and understands the issues that businesses face every day. I think that's why he was so successful in leading us through COVID, to protect our lives and livelihoods. But it's amazing to me that even in the midst of going through a global pandemic, he still focused on human trafficking, focused on public safety, focused on reforming foster care. It's an incredible track record, and it's one of the many reasons that we were proud at the Georgia Chamber to be the first organization in the state to endorse him for his reelection. But I'm sure as he comes out, he'd much prefer us remembering that in his first term, he was the winningest governor in the country. And I don't mean politically, I mean World Series and 2 national champions. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Governor Brian Kemp. Several questions for you today, but before we do, if I could, I mean, we thank you a lot for your service, but I want to thank Miss Marty and your girls. They have been incredible ambassadors for this state, working with you, sharing with you, but also being in the trenches all over this state. On behalf of the business community, would y'all please join me in thanking Miss Marty and the girls.
Appreciate you doing that. I had that first on my list. We got 2 of the 3 girls with us today. Jarrett and Amy Porter are with us. Lucy's in West Georgia, back in school, so we're excited about that. But they've been incredible partners and have represented our state well, so thank you guys.
Are they still raising money for gas? There's a can here this morning?
Not as much as we were 2 or 3 months ago.
Right. Oh, so, Governor, we just talked about the incredible economic growth over the last 4 years. And your team whispered to me this morning that you might have an announcement to share with us this morning. You want to keep the good times rolling and share a little with us?
A couple of things I wanted to announce. First, a big proposal this year for the legislative session that I know all of the General Assembly will agree with is I'm proposing that Georgia win a 3rd national championship in a row. And remember, when we announced that the college football playoff was coming back to Atlanta, first time coming to the state or any state or city for the 2nd time since its inception, then we could then win our 4th national championship. And I said that day, so hopefully we have a chance to do that. But also this morning, worst kept secret, unfortunately, because our friends in Washington, D.C. leaked this to the media, which is not how we operate in Georgia at the local level with our partners like you all that we work with every day to make projects happen, and what Pat Wilson and the team at the Georgia Department of Economic Development do. But we were announcing today that Hanwha Q-Cells, which is up in Dalton, is going to do a big expansion, $2.5 billion for solar panel manufacturing, be 500 more jobs in Dalton, and 2,000 in Cartersville, so it's an incredible project.
And they're here with us today, too.
Yeah.
They're in the back, so congratulations, guys.
It's always amazing to me how the locals in the state can keep these things a secret, but our friends in Washington, D.C. do not understand how economic development works, but thankfully it didn't screw this deal up.
Right. This is...
I can be a little frank now in my 2nd term. I just want y'all to know that.
Here we go. I do think it's remarkable, though, Governor. I mean, if this announcement were made 10 years ago, it would be the biggest announcement in history in 10 years in Georgia. And today, it's one of, another that keeps coming. Tell us a little bit about the last 4 years. I mean, it's really been a remarkable time.
It's been amazing. I mean, since I took office, really, and I say this a lot, building off of really 20 years of great conservative leadership in our state. Great partners. Just want to congratulate and thank and let people know how much I'm looking forward to working with Lieutenant Governor, soon-to-be-elect Jones, and Speaker Burns. I want to congratulate him, and the members of the General Assembly have just been a great partner, along with all of you in the room. I mean, look, these projects don't happen unless we have a local-state partnership, and we've created 130,000 new jobs in 4 years, almost $50 billion of investment that's coming. I think, you know, a lot of that is in the process now or will be very shortly, so it's going to help us survive, you know, whatever's happening now in the economy around the country and around the world, but certainly in our state, in the, you know, the rest of 23, and as we go into 24. So I'm very optimistic about where we are economically, and I know we have challenges, but what's so incredible is the amount of investment that we made just last year in rural Georgia beat the last 5 years of investment in rural Georgia. So the focus that, you know, people like Speaker Ralston, our administration, the leadership in the General Assembly, what we've been working on to make sure that no matter your zip code, you have economic opportunity close to where you live and raise your family. That's an important for all Georgia legislators, and it's certainly a priority. But we're very, very proud of that. And before I forget, I just want to also thank Speaker and now Speaker Pro Tem again, Jan Jones, for great leadership after Speaker Ralston passed away. Just a steady hand to keep our state and the State House moving forward. And I just want to thank Jan for her service.
And I know, Governor, your team had some slides up there, but I do think it's remarkable from a rural standpoint. I get this number exactly right, but 77% or 80% of all the announcements last year, the year before, were in rural Georgia, right?
They were. In, you know, half the jobs over the last 2 years, which have been 2 record years in a row, have been in rural Georgia. Yeah. Predominant amount of the investment's been there, and that's just projects that we worked as a state. I mean, there's generic growth in Atlanta in our urban areas, whether it's in Augusta where Arubis is going, and, you know, we know what's happening down in Savannah. So it's been incredible. But in 2022 alone, the point I was just making, $8.67 billion of investment that's going to rural counties. That 1 year was greater than the previous last 5 years combined. Wow. Which is just amazing. You know, I think when you look at the map with the 4 largest projects ever in the last calendar year, which is incredible, and you look at the map and the different shades of the counties where all these other little, you know, we call them little projects. I mean, we've done 500 job projects in Southwest Georgia in places like Bainbridge and Thomasville, which is enormous for those areas, you know, and 150, 120 jobs in Scriven, Georgia, and other things. It's really transformational for the tax base there. I would say probably 97, 98% of these jobs that are being created pay more than the county average, so it's giving people upward mobility and better economic freedom, which is something that we're proud of, especially when we're dealing with 40-year high inflation. Right.
And I want to come back to inflation in a few minutes, but yeah, it's amazing that there's 300 jobs. When I started economic development, we had a parade because we got 40 jobs, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, Governor, how do we keep it going, right? So as we go into this next session, as you look at, again, turbulent economic times globally, what are you hearing? What do you want to focus on from an economic development standpoint?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to keep it going. You mentioned one of them with the workforce. Yep. I mean, look, it's our most challenging issue, but it's a great issue to have because we're creating so many jobs. And you look around the country, and you hear about companies that are laying workers off, and look, it makes sense, right? I mean, people ran up, especially with the digital economy during COVID and other things. So, I mean, there's got to be a reset there. But we're not one of those states that are seeing those massive, 10, 20% of the workforce from one of our bigger companies. I think our companies here are taking advantage of big companies that are downsizing in certain other states, because we can recruit those folks to come to Georgia to help us in our workforce. But we have got to continue to work on our workforce development here. We do that better than any state in the country. Our job training's better than anybody in the country. We got to keep getting more people into that system, whether it's into our university system, our great technical college system, our combined programs that we have with career academies and dual enrollment and other things, what Superintendent Woods and the General Assembly is doing with K through 12. And we're certainly committed to doing that. We want to work with the General Assembly to do that. And I'm going to be hosting a big education business summit this fall that will really have, you all, the business community, Chancellor Purdue and the university system, our presidents and the institutions, Commissioner Dozer at TCSG, which is representing, many, many local communities across the state, as well as Superintendent Woods, for us to all continue to collaborate and figure out how we need to move the needle. How can we encourage people that are out of the workforce to come back in, whether they're older or younger?
Right.
How do we make sure that when our kids are going into middle school, even before they get to high school, they're thinking about career paths and what that path is going to look like for them, whether it's traditional university system path, or whether it's going to be learn a skill, right. Plumber, heating and air, IT, whatever it is, and get out with very little debt, if any, and be making $60,000 to $90,000 a year. So we're committed to doing that. The second thing is we got to move the needle on workforce housing.
Amen.
In our state. And I'm looking forward to working with the General Assembly. My budget proposal this year will have money for a local state partnership to start tackling the workforce housing issue. We've seen, and listen, I have been a local control governor, and I understand that, but you can't have our treasures and our input and our commitment to help and create jobs in your community, but then not have places to live or be restrictive. And we've dealt with that in places around the state. It's a tough issue. It's one of the things that we're hearing from our companies that are expanding and creating these jobs. And it's like, our workforce cannot live locally. We want people to live in the community where they're working. It cuts down on their logistics. It cuts down on our need for infrastructure. And it just quite honestly makes for a better quality of life. So I'm not saying we have all the answers, but we want to be at the table working with you all, the members of the General Assembly, and certainly our friends in local government to figure out how we tackle this issue. Because quite honestly, I think there's members of the General Assembly and others that are getting frustrated that if that collaboration doesn't happen, you're going to have a top-down approach to that versus a bottom-up.
Right.
And I just personally think it'd be better for us all to work together, but everybody's going to have some give and take there.
Yeah, I talked to a major employer last year, and I said, "What's your biggest problem?" And he said, "I can't find anybody to work here." And there was a pause. He goes, "But if I could, I couldn't find anywhere for them to live."
That's right.
So, I mean, they go hand in hand. So speaking of the housing piece, Governor, the economy's doing great. The pipeline is full. Pat tells us we've got more planes to land, if you will, more projects coming. But the inflation issue is still squeezing Georgians, squeezing our employees. You've done a lot this last year to help folks get through this. I heard $1 billion worth of savings just on the gas tax alone, which we appreciate. Anything else that you're working on this upcoming session to help Georgians?
Absolutely. I mean, no surprises here. These are all things I've campaigned on, which, as this crowd knows, I've prided myself on doing what I said I was going to do. Whether you like it or not, at least I've, fulfilled my promises. But, we are absolutely, we're going to refund all the money. This is something we worked with Speaker Ralston, now Speaker Burns, Pro Tem Jones, Lieutenant Governor-elect Jones, obviously Lieutenant Governor Duncan, other legislative leadership, to have that commitment that we're going to use our excess reserves because we've been open in our state when others didn't want us to be, and our economy's done incredible, and we're going to backfill the infrastructure transportation money that was lost by suspending the gas tax to make that whole so we can continue to keep our freight, logistics, congestion, transportation projects, roads, bridges, other things going. So my budget proposal will be making that whole as I promised I would do, and we have that commitment from the General Assembly, which we appreciate. And listen, that has helped hard-working Georgia families all across our state, every single one of them, save over $1 billion over the last 12 months. When you looked at inflation and at fuel prices, were at their peak is when we did that. Our timing, thankfully was impeccable there. So we're committed to doing that. We're going to do, General Assembly Session 2.0, if you will, and refund another $1 billion, just like we did last year, using excess reserves to put that money back in the taxpayers' pocket. They sent it to us, so instead of spending it on new government programs and bigger government, we're going to put that money back in their pocket to help them fight through 40-year high inflation. So that'll be $1 billion, and then, we heard from a lot of the legislators, and I heard this myself being on the campaign trail in local communities. Everybody's concerned about their property taxes going up. Because our economy's been so hot, housing's so tight, values have gone up, causes assessments to go up, which causes the property taxes to go up. Well, not all local governments are rolling the millage rate back to completely offset the property tax increase. And 60% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck. So when you get something like that happens, it really puts a burden on working Georgians out there. So we're committed to working with the General Assembly to take another $1 billion of our reserves and do a one-time property tax relief grant that will just help working Georgia families out there offset the property tax. We think that'll save the average Georgian about $500.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And look, all of that just helps keep our economy turning, keeps the local tax dollars turning, just helps people fight through this so we can get on the backside of 2023, whatever that entails. I'm very optimistic about how we're going to weather that compared to a lot of other states. I mean, I saw where, California's doing, I think, $11 billion of budget cuts this year after last year just having runaway spending. And we're not dealing with that because we've been fiscally conservative. We work together to fund our priorities, and then we're sending the money back to you instead of creating big government programs that then you have to come turn around and cut the next year. We don't want to do that.
Well, we appreciate that, your conservative approach to budgeting and how you've managed the state of Georgia. I know you got a lot going on the next couple of days, several other speeches to give in the next few days. Anything you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
Well, really just trying to rest up after the national championship game, getting ready for Luke Bryan tomorrow night.
All right.
But I would just say, too, I don't know if Janine Miller and Russell McMurray are here, but DOT and Janine, who's the planning director now, is over at CERTA. She's done an incredible job building out our freight and logistics plan, working with Russell, DOT, a lot of other local stakeholders. We're very excited about that so we can continue to focus our dollars where it needs to be to keep our people moving and to keep our economy moving. And I know that's a priority of this organization. And we're looking forward to working with you all and the members of the General Assembly. This is going to be a great legislative session. I feel like we're going to stay focused on kitchen table issues. There's a lot of people in the media writing about things that we need to do and things that are their priority. But just know that we're going to keep our priorities that we heard on the campaign trail from our people. And I'm not too worried about what people are shouting on cable news. We're going to stay focused on the kitchen table back home and keep our state moving forward. So thank you guys for having me.
Governor, thank you. Appreciate you. Yes, sir.